Hi, everybody. Sorry for being about 4 minutes late. I am joined today by Rio. Rio is an ISFP, and we are going to talk to Rio about her ENTJ mother, which is her duality side, along with a few other things. So go ahead and stick around. We'll have some questions from the audience here as we go. So, Rio, would you like to tell the people about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name is Rio, spelled Rio, and I am 25 years old, and I live in New York City, but I'm originally from Japan. And as you said, I am an ISFP, raised by an ENTJ single mother. So,
Okay, very cool. All right. So what's it like being an ISFP in your experience?
um, I think it's a fun type to be to live life. I feel like I feel like my SE especially is really high, so I definitely feel like I live very much in the moment, and it doesn't take a lot for me to like enjoy the moment. I feel like a lot of the simple things in life give me pleasure, just even like looking up at the sky and seeing the color of the sky, seeing the clouds move, listening to music, just being with my friends, eating a good meal. It's like those little day to day that gives me a lot of pleasure. And I know what makes me happy. Like that's the thing. Like I know what I want. I know what brings me joy. And so I feel like I don't really let the general public or society or like what's trendy or what's online influence me too much, because I feel like I know what I want in my life, and I'm very protective of that, I think. And I feel like for me, my theme of my life, and maybe for a lot of ISFP, is that like I know what I want. I just wish I had like the freedom to do it. I wish that I didn't have these like constrictions, impositions, societal rules that were forcing me to, navigate life differently or, stuff like that. But I think all in all, it's like I'm a pretty like simple person, and I take life day by day, and it's like, yeah, I would say that's the nutshell.
Very cool. I think INTJs can relate to not being confined by restrictions. It's not something that we really jive with very well.
Mm.
All right. How'd you get into MBTI? It's always kind of nice to see sensors that are into it. It seems like it's more intuitive dominated thing, I guess.
Yeah, my first actually ever introduction was in high school. Our college counselor made us take it for our career prospect, which was interesting. So that was how I found out about it. How I really got into it, I mean, I've always kind of been into personality tests. I think they're kind of fun to do. And I think MBTI specifically resonated with me because um, I feel like I like to be reminded of who I am. I feel like sometimes the things around me can make me, you know, um, like maybe wear me down or try to change me. And I feel like MBTI in a way is a nice reminder of like, right, like this is who I am, and I need to accept that. Other people need to accept that. And it's also a great way to get to know other people, including my ENTJ mother. Like realizing she was an ENTJ made a pretty big difference.
Uh,
Just actually being validated that we were different, because we always knew we were different, but it's actually like, oh, we actually are totally different. So it was things like that. It's actually nice to, be validated and like a hunch you have, for it to be put into like a letter. You're like, oh, so I was.
Very cool. So your mom was open minded enough to take the test and explore it a little bit.
Yeah, she's open to anything, honestly. I mean, she's very open minded. She's willing to try mostly anything. She's herself, she's always obsessed with something of her own. Like, she always has something she's super into. So I think she gets how other people are the same way, that if someone has an obsession, she gets it. So she was really open to it. And I was surprised of her results because I didn't I didn't actually think that, that could be like, it's just such a rare type that you just wouldn't think that's your mother. But she wasn't surprised, actually. She was like, yeah, that sounds right. Like, I think so. Like, she was totally like, yep, that's me.
Very cool. So what was it like growing up with your duality type? And just for people to know out there, your duality type and Socionics is basically where you have the same functions, but it mirrors each other. Like an INTJ has an ESFP, and I do talk about like my ESFP parents and my ESFP X a lot, and it was pretty difficult growing up and being in a relationship with these people, but it was very unhealthy on our ends, on all the way around. So you had a better experience, I hear?
Yeah, my mom and I are best friends. We're very, very close. We were never not close, but it was not always like insanely smooth and easy to, be that way. We fundamentally view life, navigate life, approach life in very differently, and we prioritize, very different things. I think both of us kind of understood that pretty quickly, but you know, just because you understand that you two are very different, it doesn't mean that that's not still a struggle. And I guess to like elaborate a little bit, like my mom, I think just like she views life as like something to like, she finds a goal, she sets a plan and succeeds, and she kind of repeats that process. That's what brings her joy, at least from like that's how I see it. And I think she sees life like metaphorically as like, a big mountain to climb, to get to the top and build something, create something, and make the world around her a better place, to improve something, to make an impact. Like I feel like that's the fuel for her. Like that's what she runs on. For me, I feel like life is like more of like a big green plane that I can run around and explore. I don't really have a lot of desire to make impact or change anything, or I don't have like a competitive, or like I don't really see life as a game or something to plan or anything of that sort. So we fundamentally like view things very differently. But like I said, I think she caught on that pretty quick, that I was really different to her. And I think she sort of adjusted to it pretty quickly. Like she just accepted that we were different, tweaked her, how to raise me plan, like I am like, 'cause she did view like raising a daughter, I think also as like this mission, as a plan. She had like this 20-year plan. And I think she accepted that we were different, tweaked the plan for like maximum efficiency and to yield maximum result, which is like for me to be, self-sufficient, independent, like a self-sustained in society. Like that was her ultimate goal. And she realized we were different, tweaked her plan. And I think that's how. So I don't know if that answered the question exactly, but I feel like that was our general relationship, or that's how she was like.
Yeah, I think you guys summed that up pretty well. She was healthy enough to actually like realize that somebody is different than you. Because like my ESCP parents, like, why aren't you more like me? Like, why aren't you the normal kid? Because they're usually the little weirdos that sit there by themselves, I guess. What do you think if get a little abstract here? What do you think if the roles were reversed? What if you were an ENTJ child and she was an ISFP mother? How differently do you think things would be?
Oh, if I was an ENTJ child?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I do think it would have been harder, because I feel like ISFPs and me, like I care more about like the day-to-day detail more, right? So like if I couldn't understand my child, and if it was like a very frustrating day, it was a bad day, like I would take that to heart, and that would hurt me a little bit, and I would, and the disconnect that me and my child, or or the ISFP mom would feel to the child, I think would hurt a lot. I think because we were flipped, well, number one, like a mother, most of the time inherently tries to understand their kid more. Like that's a bigger motivation, more than like the other way around. And I think an ENTJ in a way is like pretty quick to understand. And I guess what I mean by understand is that like they don't find pondering and wondering why someone was different to be very productive of their time. Like I don't think she sees me, and I don't think she thinks like thinking about why we're different as being like a good use of her time. So she just like accepts it and moves on. I think that actually worked out really well. I think if the roles were reversed, the ISFP would ponder a little bit and think why the ENTJ kid is so, different. And I think that things wouldn't have gone so like next.
For sure. since you like mostly live the life of a lens of an FI user, and she uses it as a TE dom. I mean, it can be very TE can be very kind of step on your toes. Can be even micromanagey when they're unhealthy, and I think just at times they kind of get caught up in a moment and they have to control everything. Did that ever kind of friction ever occur to you at all?
Yeah, it's interesting you use the word friction. I wouldn't say friction, but a lot of misunderstanding for sure. Just inherently, like, I feel like, especially during arguments, that's when it came out a lot. Like, the topic of arguments usually not, I don't think, really huge. How, like, our fighting styles were just totally different. So like once we started arguing, it just like ramped up, because for me, like, if I'm arguing or if I'm like fighting, let's say like with my mom, like my first thing to do is like I would explain how I'm feeling, and the fact that I'm upset that she hurt my feelings, and even explaining that would make me emotional. And my mom would listen to me and she'd be like, okay, cool, I get it. So back to the topic of this argument, like she would set it aside, like and that would be so frustrating for me, because to me it's like, you're not listening to me. Like, I am telling you my feelings and that I'm really upset and that like you hurt me. You're like, you just set that aside and like went back to the problem. I felt like she wasn't like present. I felt like she wasn't listening to what I was saying right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think for her though, it's like, and for me, I guess, like for me, like I felt like she always like had a ulterior motive in her head of like how she wanted the argument to go or how she wanted the conversation to end, and she was like manipulating the conversation to steer that way, or like, her head was always spinning and thinking, okay, like this is what we're arguing about, so in order to get to the solution we have, this is what we need to discuss, blah, blah, blah. Like, that frustrated me. I was like, why are you planning this argument, and why are you trying to like dismiss my feelings because it's not important to you? I think for my mom though, it's like us elaborating and opening up and having this like mushy gushy like feeling session for her is like a waste of time. Like, this is not related to what we're discussing, so why drag that on? I also think that she, maybe because of her like lower FI, I mean, number one, I don't think she trusts that type of conversation for problem solving very much. I don't think she thinks it's very important. I would try to knock it a lot. Like, what is your heart saying? Like, what is your gut? What is your feeling about this? Like, what is your heart saying about this situation? And she'd be like, why are you asking me this question? Like, I think she felt like it was kind of a weird thing for me to ask her, et cetera, et cetera. So our arguments would just go around in circles because both of us had a very, like, it was almost like we were having a very different conversation together. And it was just very frustrating for both of us, because for her, I'm sure she felt like I was not understanding the assignment. And for me, I felt like she wasn't listening to me. So it would just go on and on and on. Maybe that is like a TFI. I feel like that's a very TFI clash. But I think the reason that, it didn't, go terribly, or that we like were able to, stay close despite that, is because I think we both get over things pretty quickly, albeit for different reasons. I think she gets over things quickly because she doesn't find lingering on emotions like she doesn't do that. She, once the conversation ends, she puts that to the side. It's done. For me, I get a good night's sleep and I wake up the next morning and like I have a good breakfast, like it's out the window. I don't really care anymore. So I think we both get over things pretty quickly. And I think fundamentally we both are always trying to understand one another. And I'm always trying to be a better person, and I'm always looking for ways to improve myself. So even though my mom's delivery can be terrible sometimes, if I'm being honest, like to my perspective, like she doesn't deliver things sensitively, but usually what she's saying is pretty like constructive and it's pretty accurate. So if I cool down my head and think about what she says, a lot of the time she has a good point. And I can realize that once my emotions calm down, and I can actually like make those changes. So
very cool that you guys are able to kind of meet in the middle there. I guess just a level of maturity and how healthy you are. All right, and you did mention that you have you're diagnosed with some mild autism spectrum disorder. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? And also, there's some people in the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to just type them in the chat and we'll get to them.
Yeah, when I was 1 years old, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum in Japan, which is where I was born and I grew up. Because I was completely like different, apparently. If just from the moment I was born, they knew something was a little bit different, and I had a very, very hard time socializing with other children around me. I didn't speak at all. I didn't know how to like interact with people and team play. I also had a lot of like weird rules and weird quote unquote rules and systems that other people wouldn't like have. I had like a rule of like which shoe to put on first before I left the house or stuff like that. I only let certain people, like I only let my like grandmother and my dad push the stroller. Like, I don't know. So there were a lot, and I had like an insanely good memory, stuff like that. So I was diagnosed at 1. I do think it's very mild because I think at this point of my life, I am like neurotypical passing. I am not, but I'm passing, and I generally navigate life without much issue. But definitely like inside, I feel like there's some like I feel my neurodivergence. I feel my autism in there, but I am not passing. And
Very interesting, because it's always kind of labeled as an intuitive thing. Like I've been labeled autistic all the time. I don't know, maybe you have a little bit possibly, but I did have like a weird upbringing. So, and in Japan and Asia, I hear just in general that they're not really big on psychology, and it's like something that's really frowned upon there. And it's kind of like just kind of keep it in your family and solve it. But that's often the problem with behavioral health and psychology with your family and stuff like that. So. That was pretty interesting that you got that diagnosis there. Can you explain what it's like growing up in Japan a little bit?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I do think Japan is pretty hush hush about mental illness and stuff like that. I mean, I think the big culture there is self-sustenance, sacrifice, and kind of order, and everyone blending in, system. That's kind of the big culture there. Every person's different, obviously, but that is kind of the general rule there. So I think especially being autistic in Japan was difficult. I mean, I was rejected from the education system because back then when I was like young, they didn't really let people on the spectrum in like a regular education system, etc. And also society, like also my mother is young. She had me when she was pretty young, and being a young mother is also kind of viewed like frowned upon. So I feel like we already were a family that was sort of really like against the grain and kind of like weren't the most nuclear typical family. And so I think both of us had to build a tough skin and just kind of know what's best for us without, thinking of too much about what everyone else was doing. But I would say that growing up in Japan, I mean, I love Japan. It's a fun place to grow up. It's like a great, it's a great culture and everything. But I do think that there's a reason why I live in the US now, which is that I do think that I have more like freedom of expression and freedom to explore and, especially as a woman and career-wise. So I love Japan, but I do think there's a reason why, like, I live in the U.S. and I like both countries, but I would say.
Very cool, that NIFI freedom. I can definitely relate to that. I have a question from the audience member. HH says, how did you claim your own voice given parental ENTJ influence?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. I think that was a journey. I think that, I mean, I'm already pretty quiet, and if it's not super important, I don't really speak up anyway. And then I have an ENTJ mother who really, like, for better and for worse, but I think it's good, but like they take up a lot of space. Like, like they walk in the room and everyone notices. And I'm like the total opposite, where like I tend to go unnoticed and like written off a lot, like, written out a lot of the times in a space. So if I really need to say something, I feel like it kind of came into like an emotional explosion type of way. So came out clumsily, And I felt like I was like humiliating myself almost. But again, I think I grew up luckily with a very like compassionate and caring mother who, and she knew that I had issues with claiming my voice. So she almost like helped me raise that. She knew that her voice was like very loud and powerful, and like she knew how to, so I think she amplified my voice, if that makes sense. And she helped me craft it for sure. So she was almost like she used her ENTJ skill to help my underdeveloped skill, if that makes sense.
Very cool. Thank you, HH, for your question. If you have any other questions, go ahead and type it in the chat. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. So your mother, I guess, being Japanese, how does she accept the ADS diagnosis?
She was also, again, quick to accept it. She studies sociology in school. She has a master's in sociology. So I think she was a little bit more like maybe equipped with it. And I think once again, her being an ENTJ, she doesn't really mope about it. She accepts that that was a diagnosis of her daughter, and now she's going to change her game plan of raising an autistic daughter. And she went with it. She did a lot of research. She thought of multiple million different ways where, she thinks of like a million different ways of how things could go wrong and how things could go right. And she always, she's like, well, what if like this education doesn't work for her? What if this environment doesn't suit her? What if she can't do this at this age? What if she doesn't hit this certain milestone? What can I do? She did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and really, set up again a plan to raise, someone like me. I think that's how she dealt with it. I don't think she got too upset over it. And I do think that I definitely think that there were points in her life where she neglected herself over my care. I don't think she's even really good at that in the first place. Like, I don't think she's even really good at taking care of herself in the first place. So so raising a daughter as a single mother, that's like a double whammy. So, but I think that's how she basically dealt.
Yeah, we got that shadow SI, like they have shadow or SI trickster, and I have SI demon, and we definitely don't practice self-care very well, and it's kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what age did you move to the U.S., and did your mom move with you?
Yes. I moved at 14 to start high school in the U.S., and she came with me.
And I always heard rumors that Japan's like an NT dominated society. It's just kind of like you said, you work really hard and they just kind of want to fit in. What types would you say are the most dominant in Japan?
From my like understanding and just from my research, I think the most common actually is ISFJ and ISTJ. To me, it makes a lot of sense, especially the I and the J. I really highly believe that Japan has a lot of I's and J's due to the culture. Because, like I said, I think Japan is a, country that values like respect and manner and a lot of social order, which really makes things like very smooth and efficient and easy, and a really like nice, respectable society to live in. But it's also pretty tiring in that way. Like, you always have to be respectful and kind, and and so I think that inherently would make someone introverted. It's just so exhausting to be outside and interact with people sometimes in Japan. And people really like, I don't know if social masking is the word, but if really people, put their suit and put their game face on when they go out in the world. So I feel like maybe it could make someone an introvert, even if they may inherently not be. So I get why a lot of people would identify as an I. And then J also makes a lot of sense because Japan, again, runs on a very efficient system. And so it's actually a great place to be a J. The train doesn't come even a minute late. Like, you actually could plan your day properly and it would work. For people like me, it's a little bit rigid, but if you're a J, I think it's actually a very satisfying place to live. Like, the plan actually works there.
Very cool. I do judo, like I told you a little bit in Reddit, and I can definitely see the SI in that system. And sometimes it's kind of hard to jive with me, but that's one reason why I do it. And oddly enough, I do judo. I haven't seen him in a while with I believe he's an ESFP guy. And he's from Japan. And his name's Rio. It's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Super cool.
So I haven't really talked to him much about how it is compared to here in the U.S. So I can definitely see being like a ISFP jiving better in the American system. Have you been to any other countries?
Yes, I have traveled a little bit. I've been to China and Korea and also a little bit of Europe. And I would love to live in any country, honestly. Like I actually see myself living, you know, in many different countries and many different places. I do get bored kind of easily in one place too long. So, you know, ideally I would love to hop around and see as many places as I can and live in many, and I feel like I could adapt to many different cultures and countries. So
All right, let's go back to your mother and your relationship a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about your inferior functions, which we did touch on. Would you say that, I know you answered this with Reddit and everything and answered this on the doc, but would you say having an ENTJ mother helped you develop your TE and vice versa with her FI?
developing my TE, I would say more so like understanding TE, like more so than developing my TE. Like I understand how big TE is for some people, that it's important and that it is also inside of me and that I could use it. Especially because that is also where we clashed a lot, is that, you know, she likes to, if my understanding of T is right, like she likes to kind of plan ahead and sets a goal, has a lot of routine, and you know, and that's what like that's like her, you know, that's like her joy, I guess. For me, it's the total opposite, and I didn't really understand the point of that. But you know, she sat me down one time and kind of, you know, told me straight on, like, you know, I like, I need to know your plan. Like I need to know what you're doing, because, you know, you just flowing through life, doing what you want, like, you know, doing what pleases you in the moment and not telling me about it, not communicating me and looping in, like it's affecting like my plan. Like you're screwing with my plan in my day. So you need to actually like understand that some people have a plan in their day and their life, and, you know, you have to loop people in, especially because we're living together. Like we are a family. So you need to communicate. And, you know, you have to understand that, like, if, you know, you want to live this way and that is okay, but like to understand that not everyone's like that. And like, if someone needs you to like meet you halfway with a more, you know, orderly plan, then you have to like contribute to that. So I get it now. And I do think it's an important skill. Like I actually admire people who has a lot of T, like who has strong T or even TI. I just, either one of them. Doesn't come easily to me. I mean, I'm sure you can relate more because you're an INTJ. I have a feeling that, right? That's pretty, like, that's a lot more similar to my mother's an ENTJ. Like, do you get it from her? Like, does that irritate you when I'm just doing what I want and not looping people in?
Yeah. Like I said, I was raised by SE DOMs, and my son's mom is an ESFP, and I think my son is going to be an ESFP too. And it can be definitely very frustrating, and it's frustrating on their end too. When we're like,
I think the host Jeffrey is having some trouble. It's storming apparently where he lives, and the power went out. So I hope he'll be back. Is it appropriate for me to keep going? I'm not sure. If anyone has questions, I would love to answer.
hey, I'm so sorry, my power flickered. My power went out. It's storming outside.
No worries. I updated everyone. I said that was what happened, and I asked for some questions.
Oh, okay. Did you get any? Oh, you're hitting something cool. All right, go ahead and answer those while I use my inner ESFP and try to rig this here.
Yeah, I'm super into art. That's a pretty cliche, I guess, ISFP hobby, but I'm very into painting, particularly oil painting and drawing, and also into photography, playing the piano, um, and yes, that definitely helped me bond with people. I feel like most of the people in my life are in some ways associated to that. And the moment I find a common hobby with someone, they're immediately in my in crowd. So like that's a very quick way for me to like someone, is if we share a common passion or hobby. And I can sit in a room with someone and just silently paint, or listen to music and not speak with them. I could like.
You're a book editor, right? Can you give us a or a little elaboration on that? That's definitely not an ISFP typical occupation, I would say.
Yeah, I'm a book editor. And it's interesting that you say that you don't think that's a very ISFP or high FI thing, or um, I'm actually kind of curious, like, what is your, like, what would you say is like the heavy function of a book editor?
Well, I would definitely think that's like TESI sort of thing. Just being very patient and checking the details. I mean, I know ISFPs can be very detail oriented, so I guess that makes a lot of sense. But like even like I used to write blog articles, and that was like the most annoying thing for me was just trying to edit those things and proofread them. So that comes pretty easy to you then.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, I actually think editing is a pretty FI thing, especially book editing, because I think, you have to have like a very strong sense of like, you know, what book you want to work on and what book you think is like going to help the world or is going to, you know, be popular or, be a good book. And stuff like that at the end of the day is like it's a conviction. It's like it's a passion or feeling or a draw that you have to have, and you have to, really listen to, your sense of, okay, this is a book that is good, and we're gonna edit this, we're gonna work on this. I mean, it's like it's a commitment, and so um, I feel like that type of hunch and passion and marriage to a book, I think, that's where my FI I think comes in handy and is strong. And yeah, I think being detail oriented, I'm pretty detail oriented, and that's really good in more technical editing. I do sometimes struggle with like structure of an entire story. I can get kind of hung up and kind of forget like how will this book serve the bigger world, the larger world, in society, But I'd actually kind of argue against and say that book editing is a pretty FI heavy job in that way.
Okay, very cool. I think INTJs are very, very bad at details. I was talking to Joe from Ghosts of Young, which you can definitely check out after this if you'd like to just kind of binge watch my content. And INTJs are definitely not detail oriented people, even though a lot of people, INTJs, will claim to be. So maybe that's it. I really hate details. I'm big picture, get to the point sort of thing. Kai has a question. I have a question to actually both of you, I guess. I'm trying to find out if I'm an INTJ or an ISFP. Interesting. And I wonder what's the difference between the NI-FI loop and the FI-NI loop. Thank you. Are you familiar with the loops?
I'm not. I would love to know.
So there's a lot of theories on this. OPS, which is objective personality, thinks that there's 32 types, and some people will use their first and third function rather than their first and second. And there's I think it's not necessarily unhealthy. It can be, but there's some people who are like depressed or neurotic, and they typically use their first or third function called looping. For instance, an INTJ, you'll use their NI-FI loop. It's basically like, for me, with my NI, I'll plan all these future things and I want to do it, but I definitely feel worthless and bad about myself, so I won't do it. I have like poor self-esteem issues or anything like that. So you won't use your TE or your SE to kind of figure out how to get to those goals. Do you have ever, you said you're pretty SE focused. Do you ever had that issue? Like, I guess basically procrastination or not having confidence?
Yeah, the way I see this, I don't know if you would agree, but I think when you're like depressed or unhealthy, your functions totally flip. Like I took the MBTI test once when I was like in a really bad place mentally, and I actually mistyped as an INTP, which was interesting. But it makes a lot of sense because I was really in my head and just trying to think everything insanely logically. And I had all of these thoughts and ideas, but I couldn't move and do anything about it. But that was me in an unhealthy place. And my belief is that like if you're in a healthy place, you're more likely to be who you really are. And I feel like when you're in an unhealthy place, you tend to deny like your true nature and maybe like use things that it doesn't actually come naturally to you, like my thinking. Like thinking logically doesn't come naturally to me, but I did it so much because I wanted to like be different or bury my feelings or whatever it was. But I don't know, would you say that so I would say like for me, my NI was stronger when I was like not very like in a good place mentally. But now that I am, I don't really I'm not a huge idea person, I don't think, or I don't really think a lot or contemplate a lot about the bigger things and then like sit down and ponder and plan about it at all.
Yeah, so it's kind of similar, I guess, just a opposite slant basically. We want planned things, we have goals, but our feelings get in the way. But I guess what gets in the way as for an ISFP is that you do think and thing. It sounds like it's pretty similar the NI loop. It just so as an ISFP, I'm just trying to get this right. Like you pretty much just plan and stuff, and you don't take action with your SE, and that's pretty similar in that sense. Is that what you're saying? That you have to just kind of get yourself out of the rut and use the SE?
When I'm depressed, I tend to, yeah, like I tend to get in my head and not be able to take action as much and not just go with the flow. Even though my true nature is the exact opposite. Like I don't really plan out anything that much, and I kind of let life come at me and I take it and I go with it, and that's what's fun. But I rejected that a lot when I was not in a good place, and I know I'm not really familiar with NI that much, but to me it seems like it's a lot about like thinking about ideas and bigger like, ambitions or things in your head and kind of ruminating on that and, planning it, and maybe harder to just go for it without any sort of am I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I never really seen. Okay, I think I'm back there. Sorry about that, folks. There, throw my phone across the room. That is still the problem. All right, yeah, Kai, I definitely see why that confuses me or confuses you. It kind of confuses me as well. I'll definitely have to look more into FI/NI loop and get a better understanding of that. Thank you for your question there. I think due to the technical difficulties, I think we should just bring this thing home. I do apologize for everybody and you, Rio. Very embarrassing to the inferior. All right. Do you have any book recommendations? 3 book recommendations as a book editor? I'd like to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's so hard because I feel like everyone's so different, and it really depends on the person. What I would recommend, but this book I feel like I would recommend to anyone, which is this book. It's called Working by Studs Terkel, and it's a collection of interviews that Studs Terkel did of everyone in every different occupation. So it says people talk about what they do all day and how they feel about what they do. And they're interviews of, jobs from stewardesses, janitors, actors, hookers, farm workers, bankers, just everything. It's a little outdated. It's from the 70s, but I just think it's important to and really valuable to know what it's like to live like a very different life from you, and what people's day-to-days look like and what consumes them and what problems they have that you don't. So I feel like this is like a super valuable book. And I'd say my second recommendation, I don't have a third, so this is like my last recommendation, is just honestly whatever book that the person you love would recommend you, because I think it's a great way to get to know someone, to read the book that they love and that they want you to read. I mean, a book is a very personal thing. If someone's favorite book or a book that they recommend you is like, they're like opening your heart to you, or they're being vulnerable to you in some sort of way. That's a very private thing. A book can change someone's perspective or their life or their way of thinking or whatever. And if they're sharing that with you, like, that's definitely what you should read. I mean, I think that will do more than any book off the street. So the book title is Working by Studs Terkel, by the way. Yeah. Sorry, someone asked.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Very cool. And speaking of books, our next book club meeting, our second one actually, is on September 4th, Mountain Standard Time. It's going to be The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I started reading it, probably a little bit close to halfway done with it, and it's probably one of the best books I ever read. So go ahead and join us for that. Kai has another question. We'll go ahead and answer that real quick. Question 2, how does it play out if an ISFP procrastinates because of the 4th TE versus INTJ procrastinates because of the 4th SC function? So like if you're a little insecure about your TE, does that involve your procrastination at all? Does that bother you? Does that stop you?
Like, does my 4th T make me procrastinate? Is that the question?
Yeah. Do you ever feel like inadequate enough, I guess, with your intellect or whatever, not to take action?
I think I can be lazy, but from how I feel, I don't think it's because of my T. I think it's actually because of my FI. I think it's because I just don't feel like doing something, or it's like I'm too tired to do it, or it's just not speaking to me right now, or I feel like doing it today will lead in a bad result. Like something in my gut tells me to push it ahead and not do it right now. It's not going to be good if I do it right now. So I think my procrastination is actually me really listening to my TE or FI and not listening. Like my T would probably tell me to do it, but my FI tells me to screw the T and just not do it. So yeah.
Okay, and answer my part of the question. I will definitely feel too embarrassed, or I think I will give people a bad experience, or I will look bad, or things like that, or I'll just be kind of stuck in the NIFI loop, and I'll think of all these reasons what will go wrong. Or I guess my NE opposing personality down in the shadow too. You could answer that as well. But basically, I'm just afraid to be in the present moment. I'm afraid to act. That's how procrastination can definitely affect me. So what would you like others to know about ISFPs or just you in general? Is there any misconceptions you'd like to clear up?
I don't think there's a misconception, but I would say just trust us. I think that I feel like a lot of people don't really trust an ISFP, or maybe doubt us, or think that we don't know what we're doing maybe, but we do. And I think that we have the independence and the good intuition and energy to guide ourselves through life. And so that's one thing. And then I also think I guess it's just general messages. If an ISFP is with you, talking to you, just in your space, it means a lot. I mean, we're really selective with who we are with. We're not very concerned with, I don't think we're huge people pleasers. I feel like maybe I don't know if that's a common thing, but I don't think we are. So we're people pleasing to the people we love. That's the thing. We're not general people pleasers. So if we don't like you, or I guess we're not going to please you, but if we do, we'll do anything. So if you have an ISFP friend or a lover or a family who is with you, that's a huge thing. I mean, that means that you're in, they have let you in, so that's big. And I guess what I want to say about ENTJ ISFP, especially because, there's having a duality relationship, and maybe some have struggled with that or don't think it's very compatible, or maybe there's someone out there who's navigating a relationship with their opposites. And I guess what I would say to that, or my advice to that, is try to find a similarity, within it. There is always a similarity, whether, the fact that you're in the same room talking to each other is a similarity. I'm sure that there's a common goal. That's why you're trying to face, whether that be a common purpose or a mutual person in each other's lives, or, a love that you have for each other, whatever. There's always a commonality there. I would lean into that instead of magnifying what makes you two so different. I know my mom and I are so different, but a lot of the times I try to think of how much what makes us similar more than what makes us so different. I think she does that with me too. And I think that really helps, is just thinking of our similarities a little bit more. And then at the end of the day, just accept that people are, whatever is different, just you can't change people, and people cannot change you, hopefully. So at the end of the day, yeah, just accept and try to find a similarity, whether that be a sliver of a similarity. Try to find that.
I think that's very good advice. That's what I always try to do with my ESFP family members and son and everything like that. They definitely are looking to share experiences with you. So I definitely try to meet them on that end. And my ISFP uncle is probably one of my favorite people in the world. He teaches me a ton of stuff about fishing and outdoor stuff. He's probably the most relaxed person I've ever met in my life. He's great. I really do love him a lot. And last question I have for you, is there anything you'd like to know about INTJs? Any questions or something like that you'd like cleared up?
I'm just curious how you would answer this and how an INTJ would answer this, but like, what do you think is like your purpose in this world or your life? Or like, what do you think is the purpose of you in this life that makes it unique? Like, what is a purpose that you think only INTJs can serve?
Yeah, we are definitely very good at spotting systems. I think we fix broken systems. We can kind of easily pinpoint what's wrong with something, and we are very good at basically fixing and rehauling it. Like personally for me, I can see how bad the behavioral health system is, how bad it's broken. And reading The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk's an INFJ, and we definitely have a lot of same viewpoints. I'm reading this book and it's like, wow, this is like almost exactly what I'm thinking in many, many instances. It's a very, very good book. And it's just really a money grab. Basically, people diagnose people with like ADHD, depression and stuff just because, well, it's treatable with meds. And sometimes meds do work, but it definitely takes away the element of actually trying to tackle your problems and fix them. It just kind of masks problems. So I guess that's my personal answer to that.
That's a great skill. I feel like as an ISFP, I kind of lack in that like care awareness, noticing the errors. So got to have someone like you.
Yeah. We just kind of got to get our heads out of our asses and do it, I guess. It's kind of hard going against the grain when everybody's against you, I guess. And a lot of times that's the case there. What would you say the big purpose for ISFPs are?
I think ISFPs remind you of like the actual human experience. You know, I think a lot of people forget that, like, you know, just like the root second of our life, you know, and ultimately we have a finite time, and, you know, it's important to think about these like big things, but I think at the end of the day, it's a good reminder to be like, oh, right, like I'm here to eat and enjoy and love and just, you know, see things and just, you know, experience life as a human being or just a creature, as an animal. I think we're a good reminder for that. And I also think like we're just like a chill company, like you said. I do get that a lot, that I'm like a chill person to be around, and maybe that's good sometimes.
Very cool. I think that wraps things up. I do apologize for the technical delays there. I'm glad I had a ISFP to kind of take the reins and hold the show together while I was out. Definitely was another INTJ, I'd probably be panicking and stuff. So thank you for that.
No
And
problem.
Kai, if you're a little confused about your type, you can definitely contact me, intjequation@gmail.com, or I'm on Reddit, Discord, Instagram under INTJ Equation. If you'd like me to kind of help you out, I would be glad to do so. Thank you all for going beyond a clickbait, and have a great day.